Peter Parker and Greg Heffley are two characters that have a lot more in common than what you might think at first. They both went from being bullied or feeling like a loser to becoming the bully once they gained some power. They both feel as though they disappointed their father and father figure, and both desperately try to save their relationships before their lives eventually unravel before them. These are just some of the similarities between these two characters, and we'll cover more of this in a bit. But first, I wanted to share why I'm making this video in the first place. Both of these trilogies have the most amount of watch time for me personally out of any series of movies ever. I've watched them countless times as a kid, and remember having days where all I would do was just watch these movies. And now as an adult, having rewatched them, I can finally put into words what it is about these movies that means so much to me. So let's jump right into what might seem like a crazy comparison. In Spider-Man 1, we see the social hierarchy, and we know Peter is at the bottom, as shown to us in the beginning monologue and the immediate scenes after, where none of the people on the bus want to sit next to him, even the quote-unquote stereotypical losers. And he also gets pushed around during the field trip until he gets bitten by the spider that of course gives him his powers that we all know. And this is where the greatest amount of change comes from in his life so far. And with this moment of newfound power, he allows it to corrupt him. In the comics, it takes the bully victim becoming the bully part of Peter's origin much farther than the movie, but we still get to see that part of him, that despite being bullied, if he were given the chance to have the power to, he'd become a bully himself. And that manifests in his fight with Flash when he realizes he can beat him up, the way he argues with Uncle Ben in the car, how he allows the robber to get away, and to a lesser extent, him getting home too late to paint with Uncle Ben, and his interaction with Bonesaw. We can see how happy he is after beating Bonesaw because he's never gotten that kind of recognition and love in his life, ever. But unfortunately, he doesn't understand that with great power comes great responsibility, until after Uncle Ben is eventually shot and killed. In the first Diary of the Wimpy Kid movie, something similar happens. We are also shown a social hierarchy, and despite Greg's ego telling him otherwise, he is near the bottom, and also a victim of bullying, whether it's at home or at school. The greatest change for Greg in this movie is navigating through middle school and straight up trying to survive it. Throughout this movie, he tries to change his only friend Rowley. He desperately wants to get popular and will do anything to make that a reality, and that becomes a reality once he joins the safety patrol. He finally gets that taste of power and popularity that he's always wanted, and in this moment of power, he starts to boast to other kids about his position and what he gets from it.
Just remember, with great power comes great responsibility.
And even allows Rowley to take the fall for him when he puts the kids in the ditch, because he'd rather keep his power than admit that he was the one who made the mistake, and allows Rowley to lose his position. And once they leave the principal's office, only then does he admit to what he's done, once they're away from authority that can take Greg's power away. Despite Peter making amends by taking Uncle Ben's words to heart and becoming Spider-Man, and Greg making up with Rowley and giving up his position on the safety patrol, these both leave scars on them that they have to learn from and grow from as people. And that's what makes these movies and characters so great, is their relatability. I'm gonna get vulnerable here for just a moment, but I can relate to these movies' lessons of a bully victim becoming a bully, or someone's desperate need to become popular corrupting them, because I went through the exact same thing growing up. In middle school, I was bullied pretty badly, specifically in 6th grade, and I felt like that outcast loser who's at the bottom of the hierarchy. But one day that began to change. People started to like me, and eventually I made some quote-unquote friends with some more of the popular kids, and I also got that same taste of power that both Peter and Greg felt in this movie. I think about this so often, and it has to be one of my biggest regrets to this day, but I had let this taste of power corrupt me, and this kid that my quote-unquote friends were messing with told me to push him down to the ground, and I can finally officially be a part of this stupid cool kid whatever. It's something stupid in middle school, but they convinced me, and I did it. I pushed that kid to the ground, and when I saw his face, I saw a glimpse of myself, who was also that same bully victim, and I never saw that kid again after that. After that moment, I realized I had become what I hated. In my quest to become popular, to stop being a loser, and to stop getting bullied, a bully victim became a bully, and I knew that I needed to change. Okay, let's move on from all that sappy stuff and go over some more similarities between these two series. Diary of a Wimpy Kid, Project Rules, and Spider-Man 2 are both the immediate sequels for both of these movies, and are unanimously agreed upon to be the best in their respective trilogies. And I couldn't agree more. I also believe this is where the most significant story beats start to show up for these characters. Throughout the first movie and the beginning of Project Rules, Greg has been at odds with his older brother. The first movie straight up opens with Roderick messing with Greg at the very first scene of the entire series. But a consistent subplot throughout this first and some of the second movie is the back and forth between Greg and Roderick, and this dynamic comes to a head when Roderick has his house party and he traps Greg in the basement, and Susan calls the house phone, and it leaves Roderick with no choice but to let Greg into his party. And because of this party, Greg and Roderick finally get along and grow because they decide to keep this secret together. But Greg's first lie that sets him up for failure comes in the form of the DORE that him and Roderick need to replace without their parents knowing. But eventually Greg gives in and tells his mom that him and Roderick replaced the bathroom door. But he's able to manipulate his mom into not telling his dad and not getting in trouble by convincing her that it was for the good of him and Roderick's relationship and that only a few friends came over. And while being kind of a half lie, it's still a manipulation tactic that sets him up for even more failure later. Greg and Roderick both leave the house and hang out, which is something they never did before, and went out on their own to have fun, without the influence of mom bucks being an ulterior motive for Roderick. But this quickly falls apart once they both get home, and their parents find the pictures that Greg took during the party, and then Susan announces that Greg had already told her, which ruins all the progress that Greg had made with Roderick. Because of course, they both get in trouble, and Roderick can't perform in the talent show because of Greg. At the end of Spider-Man 1, Harry believes that it was Spider-Man that killed his father, and carries a grudge against Spider-Man, and his hate is still present in the second movie, as one of the first things Harry asks is about Spider-Man during Peter's birthday party. And when Otto's experiment fails and Spider-Man saves him, he straight up tells him to his face that this doesn't change anything. And once Harry makes it out of the building safe and sound because of Spider-Man, he doesn't ask or even think about Peter or Otto, he just says all he has left now is Spider-Man. This is where Peter lying and keeping a secret of being Spider-Man is backfiring on him. Harry is harboring all this hate and resentment against Spider-Man, and because Peter can't explain or defend himself at all because he insists on keeping a secret from his best friend, the hate inside continues to grow until it's too late once Peter's identity is revealed to Harry. I mean, literally all it took was Bernard telling Harry that Norman died by his own hand for Harry to go out and help Peter at the end of Spider-Man 3. That's literally all it took. Just one sentence turned Harry to the side of good. If Peter didn't insist on lying to someone he cared about, even if it was to protect him at the end of the day, then this could have gone over so much better for Harry and Peter's relationship. Now, of course, for Greg, he's able to make up with Roderick by convincing their mom to let him play in the talent show if he helps Rally with his magic tricks at the end of the movie. And while Peter and Harry don't make up until the end of the third movie, the essence of a similar lesson is still there. That lying and keeping secrets will only hurt the ones closest to you and will only dig a deeper hole for you to climb out of. And I think that once again, we have that sense of relatability here, just like the first movies. I think we can all relate to trying to keep a secret or lying to save ourselves from trouble, not realizing that we're just screwing ourselves over even further because we lied instead of telling the truth the first time around. But for me, the most relatable part comes from Roderick Rules and the dynamic between Greg and Roderick. The writers must have all grown up with an older brother because this has got to be the best written part about this movie, especially with this kind of age gap, because I have an older brother and we had a similar age gap to them, and it feels just like this. With the older brother trying to bully you or pick on you, and you trying to get back at him in the best ways possible. And having your older brother being able to drive you around and just going out to hang out, it's awesome. This part of the movie always brings me back because it reminds me of all the good old days and what it's like being a kid growing up with an older brother. But now it's time to move on to the final movie of these trilogies. But before we go to Dog Days and Spider-Man 3, I would like to revisit Spider-Man 1 just a little bit and show its similarities to Dog Days. In both of these movies, there's an overarching idea of father figures and the feeling of making your father and father figure proud. Throughout Spider-Man 1, after losing Uncle Ben, Peter longs for a father figure. Once Peter graduates, Norman greets him and celebrates him even more than his own son. And immediately after, we are shown Peter crying that Ben couldn't be at his graduation, still blaming himself for the death of Uncle Ben. Norman actually makes an effort to recognize Peter throughout this movie a lot. When Norman introduces himself to Peter, he sees him as remarkable and treats him better than his own son even. He says he respects Peter when he decides to pave his own way instead of relying on Norman to get him a job. This is why Norman's obsession with Spider-Man grows even further once he learns his identity during the Thanksgiving dinner scene, because he sees Spider-Man as a peer, someone who could possibly join him. This is why he makes such an effort to change him and give Spider-Man so many chances to join him in his ideology. This is later proven at the end of the movie in their final fight, when Norman straight up tells Peter that he's been a father to him and he wants him to be a son to him now. But as Peter rejects Norman's offer, he knows who his true father is. And despite his regrets and feeling as if he let Uncle Ben down, he knows now that he's making Uncle Ben proud by choosing to uphold responsibility and be Spider-Man. In Dog Days, Greg's dad Frank is actively disappointed in Greg throughout this whole movie and thinks about sending him to Spaggy Union. And of course, Greg, like he always does, lies to his dad about being more active outside and tries to trick him because he played video games all day. And of course, disappoints him once he finds out. And this happens a few times. Instead of working with his dad in an internship, Greg lies to him and says he's working at the country club. And of course, his dad becomes disappointed once he finds out. And when he has to pick Greg up from being with Riley's family, he disappoints him there too. Throughout this movie, Frank makes efforts to try and find something in common with Greg after Susan drops this incredible line.
Be the father you wish your father had been.
It cuts deeper than a knife, man. But despite all these efforts, he just can't find something they both enjoy. And in the last effort, they try to go on a camping trip. Also, I love this detail in the bus where you can see the literal distance between them. I just think that's a nice touch. At this camp, shenanigans of course ensue, and at the end, Greg is man enough to take the fall for destroying the other group's camp, even if he was doing it to try to defend his dad's honor. And once the camp leader starts to talk down on Greg, Frank defends him. Despite everything, the thing that they both have in common is the love and respect that they both have for each other. And then the last banger line of this movie is dropped.
You know what my grandpa always used to say? A man who never made a mistake never made anything. The trick is to be responsible and to learn from your mistakes.
Both of these movies have a theme of worrying about disappointing your father or father figure, but both teach that as long as you loved each other and take the lessons that you learned from your father to heart, then that's enough. Okay, and for the comparison to Spider-Man 3, I can't lie, I'm gonna have to reach a little bit here. Both Spider-Man 3 and Dog Days are usually the most hated of the respective trilogies, and of course nowadays people like them a lot more, but for some reason during the 2010s, everybody just hated everything and you just weren't allowed to enjoy anything. Kind of like how Twitter is. But anyways, I think the main comparison to be made here is that there is a kind of lesson in love in both of these movies. Spider-Man 3 has a theme of forgiveness throughout the entire movie, whether it's MJ forgiving Peter, Peter forgiving Sandman, or Harry forgiving Peter. Dog Days doesn't really do this as strongly, so I'll only talk about this briefly, but the forgiveness aspect is important to MJ and Peter's relationship. For a lot of this movie, MJ and Peter have a lot of relationship issues. Peter basically ruins their relationship because of the symbiote suit and because he smacks the hell out of her and goes to the jazz club with another girl, but eventually he gets rid of it and saves her, and they are able to make up at the end of the movie. In Dog Days, besides trying to strengthen his relationship with his dad, both Greg and Roderick are trying to get with their crushes. Greg is trying to get with Holly and Roderick is trying to get with Holly's older sister. And throughout this movie, he tries to find her number after she wasn't able to finish writing it in his yearbook, and only wants to keep going to the country club that Riley goes to so he can keep hanging out with Holly and trying to get with her. And even though Roderick messes up her sister's party at the end, Greg is able to be with Holly by the end of the movie. Both of these movies kind of teach a lesson in love here, and I'm sure we can all relate to messing up our own relationships because of something stupid we did, or trying to get with our crushes by any means necessary. You know, it may seem like I was kind of reaching there with the last one, and I kind of was, but at the end of the day, both of these trilogies mean a lot to me, and they mean a lot to a lot of other people too. I grew up with these movies, and I love them so much, and I watch them again over and over again to this day. Like I've talked about earlier, I think what brings me back to these movies is the relatability of these movies and their characters. The best part about these movies is that despite the almost impossible actions of Spider-Man or straight up comical scenarios in Diary of the Wimpy Kid, I can see myself in these characters. And I love how they grow and have to learn, just like the audience does. And I'm sure a lot of other people can relate to that too. Anyways, thank you so much for watching. And thank you for giving me an excuse to talk about Spider-Man and Diary of the Wimpy Kid in the same video. I really appreciate it. Comment if you love these movies as much as I do. Subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video.